Like some of you, I watch British TV. One of my favorites is the Great British Baking Show. A dozen contestants drawn on an annual basis from tens of thousands of applicants compete for the weekly title of Star Baker over the 10-week period, and at the end, a single overall winner is chosen. The actual baking contests are broken into 3 parts. A signature bake, where the bakers must stay within fairly narrow guidelines, but are afforded some leeway in which they can exercise their creativity. A technical challenge, where the amateurs must execute incredibly difficult recipes with little or no instruction, that includes such wildly complex items as Spanish wind torte, arlettes, mockatines, shish torte, Sicilian cassatelle. I've never heard of most of them, and watching them being made is enough to remind me of why I prefer to cook and not bake. When I was writing this sermon, my spell checker flagged almost every one of those words as being misspelled. The first 2 challenges occur on the Saturday, giving the aspiring patissiers only a few hours to compete each. On the Sunday comes the last test, the showstopper, whose completion must typically occur within a 5 or 6 hour period. This challenge is essentially exactly what the name suggests. No holds barred, mind-blowing masterpieces. One of the challenges for American viewers is that all the measurements are done using the metric scale. And as a wise man once said, the United States and the UK are 2 nations separated by a common language. Words and phrases such as soggy bottom, proving a dough, saucy puds, and even biscuits. No, they're not the same thing as here. Banoffee pie, frangipane, genoise. Well, they simply don't translate well into the American lexicon. Another TV word that the Brits use is what we call host. They call a presenter. Besides Paul Hollywood and the quintessential British grande dame Mary Berry, both from the BBC version of the Great British Baking Show, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, one of my real favorites is James May. He, along with Richard Hammond and Jeremy Clarkson, are loved and hated by the viewing public for their expositional yet sarcastic and cynical look at the automobile. Of late, James May has begun to branch out into travel-related shows. May has also always been proud to show off his nerdy stripes, whether he was exploring history or mucking about with big toys, and his bumbling and shuffling Britishness made him the perfect documentary maker. I just binged through his new travel show on Amazon Prime, James May, Our Man in India. His first series was on Japan, where he traveled from the northernmost tip down all the way to the southernmost. Having worked for the Japanese for over a decade and a half, I was fascinated by May's in-depth and often darkly humorous look at the land of the rising sun as he traveled through this amazing country. Along with the Great British Baking Show, most of its amazing seasons are now available on Netflix. I highly recommend May's expose of Japanese culture, which is on Amazon Prime. You ever feel like you're going broke from all these different streaming companies? Every one of them has like one good thing, so you have to have like 6 of them. I will warn you, that the episode that sees our man in Japan visit Hiroshima was both chilling and yet deeply moving. But May is rarely that serious, and his dark sense of humor reminds me of my own. He once said that France is just a country that you drive through to get to Italy. That's all it's there for. Now, what has any of this to do with Jesus' calling of what would be the core of his group of disciples, you're probably asking yourselves? Despite his colorful use of the English version of the English language, May was quite taken aback when in Japan he came face to face with its people and the natural beauty of the landscape, and how it could be so eloquently described by the use of haiku. Haiku are traditional Japanese poems, and while they don't have to rhyme, they must adhere to a strict formula. The verses must be 17 syllables long and be in 3 lines. So 5, then 7, then 5 again. When reading the familiar story of today's gospel and Jesus' words in the King James Version, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men," I thought that this story would make a great haiku. I found some haiku that speak of fishing. So here we go. Remember the formula. Down by the river, daylight has barely arrived. Mist dances gently. It's beautiful. Simple, but beautiful. I breathe the sweet air, grass, dew, and some late blossom, perfume from the fields. The sun is up now, kissing the top of the trees. Warm gold and green mix. Actor colors. By the water's edge, I sit calm, quiet, and still. Take in the moment. I like this stuff. It's so, I don't know, it's cool. I watch the water. To fish now would be to rush. I'll learn much more here. Haiku has the uncanny ability to look deep into the true meaning of the simple, yet so effective words, and how they are arranged to produce more than just their obvious intent. Haiku becomes a sort of philosophy, a window into a deeper and more meaningful place, much the same way that an icon is a window into a more ethereal world. Here are 3 examples of haiku poems from Matsuo Basho, 1644 to 1694, so he died when he was 50. Considered the greatest haiku poet to ever have lived. An old silent pond. A frog jumps into the pond. Splash. Silence again. Autumn moonlight. A worm digs silently into the chestnut. In the twilight rain, these brilliant hued hibiscus, a lovely sunset. If you watch May's expose on Japan, he uses haiku with great success to convey the way in which the experience literally changed him as a person, even at age 56. I think Jesus would approve of a haiku that looks into the deeper meaning of his calling, of those who would become his followers, both then and today. So much like James May in Japan, I set about writing my own haiku, but not before seeing if Google knew of any that had already been written. As it goes for this gospel, I didn't find much. I did find some about Jesus. And yes, I counted the syllables, looking for the 5-7-5 formula. And here they are. Beautiful face of Jesus, mirror reflection, a soul perfection. Open and waiting, Jesus' arms are spread out wide. God welcomes us all. In humility, regard others over self, with a Christ-like mind. Beauty, majesty, never fading, bright, burning through eternity. In your secret place, away from the eyes of men, you reign, O my Lord. In your love, given, in your anger, crucified, Jesus Christ, our life. To write one about Jesus' calling of his disciples required some thought. I came up with these, and I must admit it was kind of fun. So here we go. I wrote these. Jesus sees the men. He calls them to his side. Walk with me, proclaim. By the sea they work. He comes, calling them by name. Now they fish for souls. Brothers they once were. Capernaum was their home. Christ they now make known. In darkness they sat. Then the Christ brings them his light, all forever changed. Writing haiku is both easy and yet hard, and I confess that mine are somewhat simplistic. If you're really interested in haiku as a hobby, and some people are, it's either that or baking, there's a book titled How to Haiku, a writer's guide to haiku and related forms. My understanding is that haiku, despite being limited to only 17 syllables, conveys a much deeper and larger meaning than its shortness would offer at first glance. I'll leave you with one last haiku about Jesus. I am their shepherd. My lost sheep will hear my voice and return to me. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.